Okay, let's talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is one of the most significant, fascinating asset classes in history, and there are quite a number of reasons why. For one thing, Bitcoin is one of the few assets that have gone down more than 90% multiple times and has recovered every single time to reach new all-time highs. Right now we're in a little bit of a slight correction with Bitcoin, but there are a number of reasons why I continue to remain quite bullish and optimistic about Bitcoin going forward from this point in time. We live in a time period of significant money printing. If you think about it, Congress is totally out of control. They're borrowing $1 trillion, 1 trillion every 100 days. So that's really incredible. That's kind of the sign that fiat it's being destroyed because the government just wants to keep printing money really like there's no tomorrow. And if you think about it, it makes sense why they choose the course of money printing. If you raise taxes that's unpopular, they get voted out. You can borrow money, but there's only so many people and institutions and organizations that want to actually borrow. They actually want to let the government borrow money. So the government feels that one way to deal with inflation is to just keep printing money, and they really don't like the idea of Bitcoin because, in their view, you're opting out of the inflation tax, because if they inflate dollars and you hold dollars, well, you're paying inflation tax. But if you hold Bitcoin, inflation doesn't bother you because the Congress is not able to print Bitcoin. They can't make more of it. Bitcoin recently overtook silver to become one of the largest assets in the entire world. If you think about it, is something like Bitcoin likely to just disintegrate after being one of the largest asset classes in the world? Well, in this world anything is possible, but it's very likely that Bitcoin has proven its strength. Something that strong just doesn't usually die off. And even more importantly, while gold is about $14 trillion, Bitcoin is a little bit over 1 trillion. If you think about it, a lot of people buy gold because they see it as a store of value. It's possible that Bitcoin over time may catch up with gold, and as a result may become as large of an asset as gold, or even more so. So from this point, if it were just to reach the same market cap, it would mean Bitcoin will go up 14 times. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to do that overnight, but over time it can indeed happen. So it is something to consider. Keep in mind that over time, if you're keeping it as a long-term asset, it is very possible that could happen. The Bitcoin ETFs, they also change everything. Bitcoin ETFs are basically a significant driver of new demand to buy Bitcoin from this point in time, because every single day these ETFs have created record demand. It's a sign that there are a lot of people who have been waiting for an asset class like this, basically a store of value. They don't necessarily want a stock. They don't need the cash flows. They don't want to take the risk of bonds because of the fiat, because those are just priced at fiat. Bitcoin is off-ramp in many ways from fiat. It allows people to have an alternative currency that they believe over time will be safer than the dollar, because it's basically a separation of a currency and state. Basically, you're not using, and you're not believing in a currency that the government can just inflate away in the blink of an eye. Almost every single Bitcoin has been mined already. So if you think about just supply, there's a set supply, but 19,659,731 Bitcoin have been mined, and there can only be 21 million Bitcoin. So if you think about it, the supply already is very close to the upper limit, and there never will be more than 21 million, but that's going to be way, when that happens, it's going to be way, way into the future. So it's not something I'm thinking about at the moment. It's just the idea that almost every Bitcoin that will ever be created, it's already been created, because that from this point in time, the supply is going to be restricted. And why is that? It's called the Bitcoin halving. Now this is almost like it's almost like the Olympics or the Super Bowl for Bitcoin. It happens every 4 years, and every 4 years it becomes even more significant. But basically, the rewards to Bitcoin miners gets reduced by half, and that's what that means. Basically, is that the supply is going to be heavily restricted from this point, even more than in the past. And some people say, "Oh, Bitcoin halving is priced in." Well, that's not quite true, because you can't really price in the fact that Bitcoin miners are selling Bitcoin almost every day from the Bitcoin that they're mining, and if their reward is reduced by half, it means that the volume of the supply is reduced daily as well. So all things being equal, if you have the same number of people buying, or even increased demand, and the supply is going to be restricted quite dramatically, that's another bullish indicator for Bitcoin going forward, because I believe that's going to be it's going to really restrict the supply quite a bit. Now, this is not speculative. I'm talking about a speculative thing. There are trillions of dollars in bonds, and it is actually possible, if you think about it, that some of these bond investors may decide that they want to shift some of their allocation from bonds to Bitcoin. And the major reason why is just because bonds still offer a fairly low rate of return, and also in a time period where you have higher rates of inflation, it might mean that bonds have less and less value. Maybe people just don't really trust the government that much, or even like corporate bonds don't offer the greatest level of value. So I'm not saying that all the money that's in bonds will end up in Bitcoin, but it's possible a great amount of it will be, or just even a little bit could actually have quite an impact. Imagine if $2 trillion were added to Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin only is worth $1 trillion at the moment, so that's quite a dramatic increase from where we are at the moment. And the other issue to be quite bullish on Bitcoin is because global liquidity is basically rising. If you think about it, this is an election year in the U.S. as well as in quite a number of countries, and the last thing the government in any of these countries is going to do is to cut spending, or to get away from the money printing and getting into more debt. And the problem is that people sadly expect so much from the government that the governments around the world continue to basically print a lot more money, and a lot of that will end up in Bitcoin and other assets, basically hard assets. But anytime the government starts going wild and spending a lot of money, it tends to really correspond to an increase in Bitcoin, which kind of makes sense, because it's kind of like an inverse relationship to the dollar. If people don't want the dollar, or it goes down in value, well, Bitcoin has this tendency to go up in value. So I personally think Bitcoin is going to be going up dramatically, and another reason why is because just from among my friends and people I know that I correspond with on Facebook, they're actually not super bullish on it, and are even skeptical. That's also a good sign, because it indicates that the people are not too crazy about Bitcoin yet. You actually want there to be kind of a contrarian mood with regard to these cryptocurrencies. You don't want to be in an environment where people are just fear, they have that FOMO, fear of missing out, and they just want to keep buying it. You kind of want people to be skeptical of Bitcoin when you're buying, because that's actually usually the best time. If you hear everybody talking about it and everybody is really super interested in it, well, that's probably a bad sign. It might be near the top. Anyway, I hope to keep you updated on Bitcoin, give you more thoughts in the future. Please subscribe, click the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.